Back on June 16th, 2010, my son Ryan was born at Memorial Hospital in North Conway, and it appeared a normal delivery and birth. He appeared healthy, and at about 10 hours old, he started to have some problems. He was started to display symptoms. He was turning blue, having difficulty breathing, and as a result of the work that Memorial Hospital did, we were transferred to Maine Medical Center with the belief that he had likely had a heart defect. And Maine Medical Center did an echocardiogram, and they confirmed that, in fact, he did have transposition of the great vessels, and also known as TGA, which is a congenital heart defect. And my son had open heart surgery at 2 days old. We spent 3.5 weeks at Maine Medical Center, and we became familiar with the world of congenital heart defects. I have an older son and had never heard of CHD or heart defects before. And so when we returned home and things started to settle, I started doing research and started to learn how common CHD really is. And in fact, there's 1 in 100 children who are born or diagnosed with CHD, which is, I was quite surprised to learn that that this is so prevalent, so common, affects so many people, and yet as a mother I had never even heard of it before. And so through my research with CHD, I learned of pulse oximetry, and learned that pulse oximetry is it's a simple test that can be conducted on newborns, and it's a reliable indicator of a possible congenital heart defect. And so through my research of pulse oximetry, when I first heard of it and I started learning a little bit more about it, it seemed too simple. As why aren't hospitals doing this? Why is this such an issue? It just, to me, with no medical background, it didn't make sense. It was too simple. So I actually found a couple of websites who are very big into the advocacy of pulse oximetry, and have done a lot of legislation and advocacy both at the federal level and state levels. And through those websites I made contacts with people, and there's actually another mom in southern New Hampshire outside of Concord, and she has a son who's 2.5, and he was born with a congenital heart defect, and he's actually had 3 surgeries. So working with her, we kind of at the same time put our heads together and have been in close contact and trying to advocate for pulse oximetry in the state of New Hampshire.
So if these hospitals, after a baby's born, do this, that would save them the risk of taking the baby home and then something happens and then being in a crisis situation away from the hospital. So that's really what you're trying to avoid, is early detection. Is vital.
That is the key. Early detection is so important in these children, because one, CHD is so common, but it has such a high morbidity and mortality rate. There's approximately 40,000 children are born every year with CHD, and about 4,000 of them won't live to see their first birthday. And so if we can get early detection and identify and start to address that problem before the children become symptomatic, then in essence we can save lives, and also the long-term consequences or effects of a late diagnosis.
And cost effective, because if you're taking the DART or if you're doing an emergency type situation, it's going to be a lot more expensive than if you had the early detection, right?
Correct. Pulse oximetry, through my conversation with pediatricians and medical personnel, currently it's not even a billable item for insurance, and through some of the research, it's actually the cost they attribute it to being less than the cost of a diaper change in the hospital, and of course some of the costs that are involved would include, especially New Hampshire being so rural, would be the response time, the response of your emergency personnel to get to a specialty hospital, whether that's Dartmouth or Maine Medical Center, where the child would be treated, and of course, again, long-term effects. If we can diagnose these children and identify them early, then it saves in the long run of the long-term care that's involved, whether that's speech or speech therapy, occupational therapy. Of course, some of the problems that are associated with low oxygen, long-term low oxygen levels. So it's definitely, the research has shown that it just makes sense to do it and try to identify these children sooner.
Yeah, and now tell us how you convinced Androscoggin to adopt this. I think one of the only or few hospitals to do this.
As of right now, they are the only hospital that I'm aware of. It's not. The information isn't necessarily kept. So I've done my own research to try to identify hospitals. So Androscoggin Valley is one of the only ones that I'm aware of in the state of New Hampshire that currently does pulse oximetry, and that has only been implemented in the last I believe it's been about 2 weeks. And they implemented it. The pediatrician, Dr. Beals, through Androscoggin Valley was a big played a big role in getting that implemented through their hospital. And in fact, they a couple of weeks ago there was a CBS special that was done with a woman that I had gone to high school with, and so her son was born in June with a congenital heart defect, and they did a story on pulse oximetry, and so I had notified everyone in my contacts to watch for the story and the importance of it, and so Dr. Beals was very big in implementing or getting a pulse oximetry implemented at Androscoggin Valley. My son's pediatrician at Memorial Hospital, I'm currently working with him to try to get that implemented there, and it should be done